Now, again, we go back to the principle. Well, I want to get more reach. I want to be exposed to more people so that I can interact with them, have conversations, and my business will grow. Okay, we'll define what that audience is, like we said, the marketing formula. Second step, well, what's of value? Well, here's an easy hack. Go to ChatGPT and say, this is the group of people that I'm trying to reach on social media. Act as an expert content creator and give me a list of the 5 or 6 biggest challenges or problems that that person has in their life and in their business.
Welcome to Loans Elevated, the podcast that brings you the latest industry news, expert interviews, and insightful discussions that will help you stay ahead in this dynamic market. I'm your host, Brock Lassick, and I've spent years in the trenches of the mortgage industry, helping individuals and businesses navigate the complex landscape of real estate financing.
I'm your co-host, TJ Heidenreich, and together we'll cover a wide range of topics, from business strategies that skyrocket your success to mindset and motivation that fuel your growth.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this month's F.U.E.L episode brought to you by the Loans Elevated podcast. If you're not already, please be sure that you're following Loans Elevated on all platforms. You can find us everywhere at Loans Elevated. That's our handle. You can find us there. Now, I'm excited to introduce our guest for today. His name is Phil Treadwell, and Phil is the founder and mindset coach at MME Academy, where they help professionals achieve peak performance through proven strategies and mindset and execution. Now, he also has the Mortgage Marketing Expert podcast that he runs, so he's kind of in this world as well. But I think first and foremost, Phil, you are a mindset coach for salespeople, and that's what we're talking about today, which is what do the uncommon have in common in specific to salespeople? How do the best salespeople execute, and what do they have in common is what we're talking about today. So, Phil, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Man, I appreciate you having me. This has been something I've been looking forward to. I've heard a lot about you, and obviously we have mutual friends. So I'm excited to have the conversation and make sure we can add some value and create some lift for some people. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. This is crazy, but I was kind of checking you out the other day, and I saw that you had Gary Vee on your podcast, which was pretty freaking sweet. Dude's a stud. And I was curious, like, how in the world did you even get a dude like that on your podcast? Man, it was a happy accident. It's always been interesting. From when I started the podcast, my whole point of starting it was the 3-step marketing formula that I coach and teach on now, and I've always subscribed to, is first understanding who is your ideal audience, who's the target market that you're trying to reach. The second step is what problem do you solve? What's the most value that you can add that audience? And then the third step is what's the most effective medium to deliver that solution and that value to that audience. As I was a area manager, regional VP, 2017 and 18, my audience was other mortgage professionals. The value that I was trying to add and was able to add was how can they build their business more effectively, more efficiently, become more modern and relevant. And I chose podcasts specifically because in that season of 2017, 2018, there weren't a lot of people that were watching, 30, 45-minute, hour-long videos. And I knew podcasting was a medium that you can listen to in the car, you can listen to at the office while you're doing stuff around the house. Even though I wasn't a huge podcast enthusiast at that point in time, it was just kind of emerging. I decided that was going to be the medium that I chose. And so I jumped into podcasting, and Gary Vee was, a big influence of mine and kind of coach and mentor from afar, if you will. And so that was always for me the ungettable guest. And I started off my podcast having a lot of highly influential people within the mortgage and real estate industry. And what I always wanted to do when I invited someone to be a guest was make sure that I showed them some value for actually coming and sharing. Guests know what the value is that you have for inviting them on the podcast, but how can I create some value for that as well? And so I kind of waited for an opportunity, and Gary was doing, it was called Agent 2021 in 2018, 19, and 20. And it was for real estate agents, insurance agents. And the first year, I think they did travel agents. And the next year, they switched up travel for mortgage. And I saw that he was kind of promoting this to the mortgage industry. And he always, at the time, was just sharing, hey, email me, Gary at VaynerMedia. And the right before that, I'd had Ryan Serhant for $1 Million Listing New York, top realtor. He had been on my podcast, and I knew they kind of knew each other. So I literally cold emailed, and in the subject of the email line, in all caps, I put more butts in seats at Agent 2021. And in the email, I just said, I have a mortgage podcast. I'd love to have you on, even if it was for 5 or 10 minutes, share some value. I've had Ryan Serhant on. I think we can help, put butts in the seats for this Agent 2021. About a day and a half later, he responded himself and said, I would do it, copied in his team. And it was, I think, the end of 2018, I think maybe when that was happening. And January leading up to it was when the event was. I think this was like November. In January was the actual event. Well, we had scheduled a Zoom recording, and they even rescheduled it once. And I had everything ready. And 5 minutes before he's supposed to jump on this Zoom call, they canceled. His team reached out and said he's got a travel engagement. He's not going to be able to make it. We'll get you rescheduled. Fast forward, didn't get that scheduled before the actual event. So I went to Agent 2021, got to have dinner with him with a group of people and kind of meet him a little bit. And so I'm still thinking, like, how in the world can I continue to add value in some way? And so I continued once a month to reach out, and I just replied all to that entire team email, coming up with different reasons that we could potentially have him on. Well, he came out with his K-Swiss, I think Gary V 4s or something like that, where it had like inspiration and positivity and all these things written on them. And he said, anybody that buys 5 pairs, I've got a special piece of content for you. Just email the receipt here. And I'm like, okay, well, I've never worn K-Swiss, but they had a high top and a low top version. So I bought pairs for me, some pairs for some other people. I sent the receipt to that email, said, I'm still trying to add value, would love to have you on. And his team immediately responded and said, hey, we're still going to get Gary V on, or we're going to get him on your show. And I still had to follow up for a few more weeks. And the head of his team reached out a few weeks later and said, instead of doing it virtual, why don't you just come to VaynerMedia in New York and we'll record it live in his office?
Oh, dude,
and I'm
that's
like,
awesome.
Absolutely. So that's how that whole thing went down. It probably took almost a year from the initial time he said he would do it for everything to actually transpire. And I tell people all the time, for me, that was the ungettable guest. And we, just like everything in life and in business, success comes from consistent and persistent effort over time. And I think that that's one of the traits, even to segue into the conversation we're having. Elite professionals, top performers, those are uncommon people, right?
Yeah.
Uncommon is different. It's special, because if everyone did it, it wouldn't be, it would just be common. And so through podcasting, through mentorships, and becoming friends with some of these guests that I've had on and whatnot, I found that in all types of businesses, in all different personality types, and people all over the country, there are things in common. So uncommon people have things in common. And so it's actually the title of a book that I'm finishing, What the Uncommon Have in Common: Mindset, Habits, and Tactics of Elite Professionals, of Top Performers. And I think that one fits in almost universally, that people who are uncommon, who become successful, who become elite, understand that you have to stay consistent and persistent in your efforts over time. We know what it means to be consistent, right? Doing it regularly, doing it all the time. But persistence is where we drop the ball, because sometimes we're consistent until we get a result and then we stop, or we stay consistent, but we're not seeing results and we stop. And that's what persistence is. Staying consistent, whether you're getting results or not, and understanding that it might be 3 months for some people or 3 years for another. But if you actually achieve the goal you have, it should be worth it either way. And I think that's what, that type of person, that type of professional understands, is what I want really, really badly. And this is the thing that I'm going to pursue at all costs, and I'm going all in on this thing. I heard a stat that 93% of people don't achieve the goals that they set for themselves on any given year. And the first reason is they're not clear enough about what it is they want. They're like, oh, I want to get fit this year. I want my business to grow. But they're not dialing into that specific thing. They got to get very clear. And the second reason is they just don't want it bad enough. They think that's a goal they're supposed to have, as opposed to, this is something that the metaphor I heard is, I want this as bad as a drowning person wants their next breath. Mm-hmm. And while that's a little bit of a morbid example, if you think about it literally, when someone's in that situation fighting for breath, they're not thinking about, did I leave the stove on? Man, I wonder if I have enough money to pay the bill this month. That they have a singularness of focus, and that's really what it takes to succeed at a really high level.
Yeah, for sure. No, well said. And that's, I mean, the funny thing is you getting a guest on your podcast, a big, massive guest so many years ago is literally that pretty much sums up the recipe of what you have to do to be successful. All it takes is just bare bones, grit and determination, and just keep going, keep moving forward, one step in front of the other, in front of the other. And I feel like so many people, that's really, it's a very common thing. Anyone can do it, right? But that's what the most successful people do really well, is they don't get caught in the glitz and glamour and distracted by new things. They just do the work, which is so crazy. Now, real quick, let's just drop a plug. Give everybody, like, how do they find your podcast? Because that episode, I listened to it and it's still relevant today. I don't know how long ago that was recorded, but I mean, it's got some really golden nuggets and it's still relevant today. And I think people should check it out. How do they find that?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Mortgage Marketing Expert. It's for mortgage real estate. We have financial services, insurance. Early on, we got more tactical into mortgage marketing, but everything we talk about now is success principles, mindset, things that are really going to be agnostic to any one industry. We just have kept the name, but it's just MME for Mortgage Marketing Expert, mmepodcast.com. That'll take you to a link tree so you can choose the platform you want to listen. And we do have a couple of buttons on there for the Gary Vee episode, the audio and the full video. And you're exactly right. The things that he talks about are still relevant. Even this was late 2019, because at the end of the day, success principles and what makes someone in business successful, those are universal, right? Success principles as a whole are universal. Now, how we apply those in the current day and time, or apply those to our individual business, that's the thing that people have to figure out for themselves. That's
or
really
individual
the
life, right? I mean, it's parenthood,
100%.
It's with your spouse, all of these same principles are this. It's success, just period. Requires this, no matter the industry, no matter the purpose or the reason or the context. It's all the same stuff, right?
It is. And the thing that I've carried from that episode the most is when he talks about relevance. And I still use that in almost every talk that I do now. When I first got in the mortgage business 21, almost 22 years ago, I answered a newspaper ad. I had 4 days of classroom style training. I followed my boss around to his, the real estate offices, the referral partners, his milk route, if you will, on Friday. And Monday, he started making, he literally took our letterhead, whited out the phone and the fax number at the bottom, cut out his flyers, taped it in the middle, put it on the copier, made 100 at a time. Like you could see the Scotch tape, like in the flyers. And he did that with about 10 flyers, so maybe about 1,000 flyers, put them in this big Xerox box and said, go talk to realtors and get them to send you business. And he also threw in there, because I was, early 20s at this time, he said, make sure to keep hair on your face and wear a tie. It'll make you look older so that people take you seriously. It wasn't in case they don't, like I wasn't going to get taken seriously. And I share that story because I walked around, I map quested, and it shows you how long ago it was.
Yeah.
I map quested from my apartment to all the real estate offices in my town. And I could go office to office and be done by lunch. And I would do the whole thing again in the afternoon. And I would hand out these black and white photocopied flyers, lay them on desks, try to start conversations with people. And I would do that 9, 10, 11 hours a day. Now, it took me about 2.5 weeks to have my first real conversation with a realtor that actually led to anything. But I did 56 deals my first 12 months in the business.
Wow.
And so that story is significant for two reasons. One, how many things are we willing to do 9, 10 hours a day with zero results for weeks on end before we have our breakthrough, number one? And number two, the success principle in there that I had was getting in front of people, creating connections, creating relationships, because business has been done, is being done, and will always be done based on relationships. So that success principle applied, but the tactical way that I implemented it, walking around real estate offices, handing out flyers, that's not applicable today. But the principle is, and that's what people need to understand when you go look at these gurus who have built their business. you need to look at not just what were they doing in their growth period, because, well, first of all, a lot of people look at what they're doing now. Well, they've already made it. You need to go back and look at what they were doing then. And don't just look at exactly the actions they were taking. Try to understand what was the underlying reason for it. What was the principle that they were trying to apply? Because then if you can apply that principle in a relevant way to your business, that's where you're going to have success. And that's really what this book is about, and what these talks are about, is taking some of these things that we all kind of inherently know, that we've heard about before, and trying to reframe it to, this is what it takes in this market right now to be successful in mortgage and real estate, in sales and entrepreneurship, whatever your endeavor is.
Yeah, that's really good. So basically, it's like zoom out and identify the meta principle that you need to implement to be successful. It's not the actual action that is taking place if it's outdated, for example, like you just shared. So maybe help us understand, are there strategies or tips or ideas you have on identifying those meta principles that allow you to understand what they're doing, and then you get to apply it in your demographic, in your time, make it relevant to your business?
Yeah, I think it's really, you just need to just stop for a second and think about, why is what I'm doing successful? We focus so much on the tactical things that we do. The question that I get all the time, most frequently when I speak or coach, is always, how many calls do I need to make? Or how many videos do I need to do? How much of this, how much of that, how many? And to the answer to every question, no matter how many they're doing, is always more. Yep. If you're asking how much you need to do, the thing's always more. But beyond that, you have to figure out, what is it about these tactical things that make you successful? And most of the time, in my opinion, there's the underlying principle there of, well, that's me handing out black and white photocopied flyers at real estate offices, making pop buys or cold calls, is working, because after I do a ton of them, I'm eventually going to create a conversation that leads to a relationship that can lead to a lead or a deal. Is there an easier way that I can make that principle happen? Is there a better way for me to connect with people, create relationships, and in turn get leads? But the other thing that I think is even more important in any tactical thing you're doing is to focus on the process and not the outcome. Because we're like, okay, how many calls do I need to make, or how many videos do I need to do, or how many people do I need to talk to? Instead of trying to figure out how many of something to get the result, to get the outcome, we need to focus on the process of becoming better in each of those tactical things. So instead of making 100 phone calls, let's say, what if every single phone call you worked on getting better with every single phone call? And understanding why they hung up on you, or why they weren't interested, or why they had a conversation with you. And then same thing with video. All of these things, it's about the reps. You get better as you do it more. And if you focus on that and kind of fall in love with that process of the tactical things, again, in a consistent and persistent way, if you focus on the process of being better at doing video, being better at conversations, making your content better, having a better client experience, what happens is you turn into the person that the results just happen for. You turn into this person that doesn't need to make near as many phone calls, or send as many DMs, or put out as much content, because you've gotten more proficient at it, and now the results are happening for you. Because if you just focus on getting through the list of things to get the result, every single time you have to do that exact list of things that many times to get the result. But it's about creating effectiveness and efficiency through this whole thing. But in anything you're doing, you have to say, okay, well, social media, everyone says I need to do video. Everyone says I need to, post content or whatever. Well, ask yourself, what about that makes people successful? What about that is actually going to get you results? Well, if you think about social media, it's about being social. It's about having conversations and creating connections with people. So with that in mind, what's the easiest way on social media to start conversations and create connections with people? 9 times out of 10, that's not a video explaining the definition of amortization or what the loan process is, right? It's putting out content for things that people are interested in. Because we also have to understand there's been an evolution with social. It used to be get as many followers as you can and put out content so that some of them can see it. right? You only saw stuff for people that you followed, and the only people that saw your stuff are the ones that followed you. That's not how it is anymore. Shortly after that Gary V interview that I did in early 2020, when TikTok really blew up, they went to an interest-based algorithm. They only showed you videos of things that you wanted to see that they thought were interesting to you, regardless of whether you followed them or not. And now every algorithm in social media is that way. They're interest-based algorithms. It's based on the quality of content. Is it relevant to the person that's seeing it? And they gauge whether to show it to a ton more people based upon the sample size of, okay, well, they made a video about how to swim or fishing or growing herbs in your backyard. So we showed it to people that we know have those interests. And if they liked it, we're going to show it to a bunch more people that we think have those interests. So again, if you go back to the underlying principle of connections, relationships, developing business that way, we want to put out content in that marketing formula to the ideal audience that we're trying to reach and make it something valuable to them. We don't have to boil the ocean coming up with a 9-step retire early rich investing in real estate strategy, right? It can be something as simple as someone sitting in a doctor's office waiting room or at the DMV, right? They're bored out of their mind. They're frustrated that they're there. They've been sitting there. Again, when they open their phone to scroll, they're not saying, man, I hope I see a realtor that has a key for the clients that just closed a home. No, they're looking for something informative or entertaining that will take them out of that environment. So if you do that and give them something that they want to see, they'll give you engagement. They'll give you a like or a comment, right? That's how we grow our network. And the other principle here that I think really uncommon people, elite professionals understand that's really tied to this is people pay for solutions to their problems. So if you need more sales, right? You want more revenue, you need more leads, you want more engagement in your social content, doesn't matter what metric. If there's something you want more of, the reason you're not getting it, there's 3 reasons. 1, you're either not solving that person's problem, right? That's pretty simple. 2, you're not clear about what problem it is that you're solving, meaning you're not clear about what you're trying to do, or they don't really understand what you're trying to do. Or the third thing, they don't believe that you can solve that problem. So if we really understand this is all about providing solutions, providing value. Now, again, we go back to the principle. Well, I want to get more reach. I want to be exposed to more people so that I can interact with them, have conversations, and my business will grow. Okay, we'll define what that audience is, like we said in the marketing formula. Second step, well, what's of value? Well, here's an easy hack. Go to ChatGPT and say, this is the group of people that I'm trying to reach on social media. Act as an expert content creator and give me a list of the 5 or 6 biggest challenges or problems that that person has in their life and in their business. It'll spit out a list of problems. Say, great, I like 2 and 4. Give me a content strategy or give me ideas for a reel or a post or a story. And it'll give you ideas and say, okay, well, I want to do that topic for a reel. Great. Act as an expert Instagram reel creator. Write a script on this topic for that audience we just talked about. Write it so that I can read it or say it on video in 30 or 45 seconds or less. Make sure it starts with a really strong hook in the beginning sentence so that people want to listen to the video. And it spits out a script. Now you can change it, right? And all of a sudden you've got an idea for a video to create. So the question really matters is, who is it that I'm trying to reach? And how can I get them interested in, looking at what I'm trying to put out there? We try to use social media as an advertising platform because there's great marketing opportunities, but it's not advertising, it is marketing. So something we need to break down here. What is marketing? Marketing is simply getting someone's attention. Hard stop. Sales is something different. Once you get to know someone, create some rapport, give them something of value, and they've created some trust, then you can have a call to action or give them a strategy, and that's sales, right? Where you close. But so many people think of their marketing and they're just selling because everything in there is a call to action, call to action, call to action. So if we think we're simply trying to get people's attention, well, what can I do? What can I post to get someone's attention? Now, effective marketing, where we really get results, is taking that attention once you've gotten it and balancing it with trust, right? I could light myself on fire and put it on TikTok and create a whole lot of attention, but I've created zero trust that someone wants to do business with me. But we have a lot of really, really high level professionals that are very trustworthy, that have incredible businesses, but they're capped at what they can do because not enough people know about them. So you have to balance the two. So tying these things together, if you're out there trying to market, you get some attention with some content about whatever topic, you now need to create trust. The way that you create trust, there's two ways. The first one is show things in common with someone. We're naturally drawn to and have an element of trust with someone who is like us, right? We grew up in the same town. We went to the same school. We, both know we're both friends with our barber or whatever it is. And I'll use just a quick story to illustrate. When I graduated high school, my graduation present from my parents was a trip to Europe, one of those educational tours. It was wasn't a huge ticket price, but it was 17 days in 6 different countries. And when I looked at the itinerary on July 4th, we were going to be in Venice, Italy. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so cool. Fireworks in Venice. Well, obviously I was a sharp kid, but I didn't put together Italy doesn't celebrate American Independence Day. However, when we were there, we saw another group of Americans. And there's like 20 or 30 of them, 20 or 30 of us. And our group stayed together pretty much the whole day. We're like, oh, high five, happy 4th of July. Pickpockets are rampant in European tourism cities. So all of a sudden, when they would go to shops or the bathroom, we'd watch their stuff. And when we did the same thing, they would watch our stuff. Well, I thought about it years later. I don't walk to a sporting event like, hey, we both live in the US. Here, will you watch my wallet while I go to the bathroom? Right? But in that setting, we trusted them because they were like us. I don't walk around, the US being like, oh, high five. Unless me living in Texas, I'm in Florida and I run into someone else from Texas. But I don't do that in Texas unless me living in Dallas, I'm in Houston, right? So we naturally are drawn to and have trust with things in common, which is why we need to showcase things about us, not just about our business. The second way to create trust.
Does your home and auto insurance seem to go up every year without fail? Mine did too. I thought this was just the way the insurance industry worked until I found my friend Alan Johnson with American Family Insurance. After more than 15 years with the same insurance agent, he saved me over $3,000 per year when I switched. I refer all my family, friends, and clients to him, and their experience is similar. Great rates and a great experience. Call Alan for a free quote today at 801-708-2962.
The second way to create trust is give something of value without asking anything in return. Give them a free resource. Give them another video. Give them a home buying seminar. Or better yet, just give them value in your video and don't always have a call to action at the end. I hear marketers sometime or coaches and things say, you need to have a call to action every single time. I disagree. I think a call to action is like the word but. I could say, hey, I love your shirt, but I've now negated everything I said before that. So if I give someone a great video, a great how-to, and then I say, hey, call me with your home buying needs or home financing needs or click the button to buy my product, I've now told that audience the only reason I gave you value is to get something back. There's no
question
trust
on
there.
that.
Yeah.
What if your call to action was go to the link in my bio and download this free resource? Now you have
Absolutely.
a subtle call to action and you're building your network. So you just have to be I guess a little more strategic in the way that this call to action works.
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
again, and I should probably rephrase it, not all calls to action are created equal, right?
Got it.
But I think so often whenever our call to action is sales oriented, that's where you're turning people off. Where to your point, hey, check the link in my bio. I've got a cool resource on this topic. But the way that we practice social media as people, if we see a really cool video, like we really like that video, we typically click on whoever made the video for 2 reasons. 1, who is this person? And 2, do they have other videos like this? Well, if in your profile, you've got a really strong what I call a grandma statement, right? A mission statement about what you do so simple, even your grandma understands it, right? I have a mortgage practice that helps people build real estate wealth, or whatever, that very short thing. And then you have click here for free resources. Like in my Instagram bio, if someone goes to @Phil Treadwell, you'll see free resources. It goes to a link tree, and there's 4 different free resources that I offer. 50 books every business professional needs to read, 100 viral hooks for videos, 30 Instagram post ideas, all those types of things that are just of value for someone. That being said, trust is an important part of this. And from a human perspective, showcasing things in common or giving value without asking for something in return is how you create trust with people. And if you continue to do that over and over, when you do your lead generation activities, because we're talking about attraction marketing right now. Mm-hmm. When you go to lead generation activities, meaning you're making phone calls, you're sending text messages or emails or DMs, if you've done this thing over here in your marketing where you're giving value, you're way more effective in the outbound lead generation because they've seen you, right? There's that social proof aspect of it. And that's what we have to realize, is that social media in large part is about social proof. If someone refers your product or service, or they happen to see a video or Google you or whatever, when they go to social media, that's to solidify their interest in you. They get to see the cadence in your voice. They get to see what you talk about. They get to see more about you. And that helps them make the decision of whether they want to call you or engage with you further. There's a group in Nashville, Tennessee called the Brand Builders Group. It's owned by Rory and AJ Vaden. They've helped build brands for people like Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness podcast, Ed Milet, the author John Gordon. And they did a commissioned a study of PhDs that studied marketing and branding and consumer opinion and sentiment and viewpoint on this. And what they found, kind of just as a side benefit, just a little piece of data in there, 2/3 of people wanted to see more of a personal brand from their doctor, their attorney, their employer, their boss, or their financial advisor. Now, the takeaways is that those 4 people, typically their ideal client is similar to our ideal client when we're in business. And 2, when you go to that type of profession, right, an attorney, a doctor, your boss, a financial advisor, you're a little bit exposed. There's some anxiety there because you're talking about things that you don't just talk about in normal conversation. So when you tie that together, the reason they wanted to see more of a personal brand, more about those people, is to make them more comfortable, to make them more relatable whenever they have these conversations that are a little more of an anxiety thing. So the high level point is, the higher the requirement of trust in your business, the more important the need to have a personal brand, to digitize your reputation, to have stuff out there for people to see. And it's underestimated because even if you have a huge database of past clients, a huge list of people that refer you business, all these great advertising and marketing strategies, just having a personal brand, just having some social awareness of you is going to massively increase your conversion. And I know that because in our everyday life, when someone refers us a product, a restaurant, a movie, a service provider, the first thing we do is we go Google it. Mm-hmm. We go check it out. And if it's a person, the first 3 or 4 results of the top 5 are social media profiles. That's what we do. And as soon as we realize in business, we need to start thinking like we think as a consumer, it makes it so much easier to understand why these things are important.
Yeah, that's huge. So we've covered so much in the past few minutes. And I want to go back because at one point you said the answer to the question of how many calls do I need to make? How many actions do I need to take? It was more. That was the unified answer. However, there's a nuance here in what I'm hearing you saying. Maybe I'm hearing it wrong, so clarify. But you do have to do more, but you got to do more of the right things and more of the things that you are good at doing is the nuance that I'm hearing. You didn't say that specifically, but maybe everybody isn't good at making outbound sales calls, but somebody's better at posting to their social media story or doing a podcast or doing whatever. So would you say that it's important, do the uncommon, the best, do they distill down what they're really good at and they enjoy doing, and then they do more of that?
Yes. So there's three parts to this. The first part is the answer. The reason I give more is in 99% of cases, when someone's asking how much or how many of something, they just need to go do more work. They're not getting a result and they're like, okay, when's the end in sight? And they need to go do more, so that through the reps, if they're focusing on the process of getting better, then how many is always going to shrink. So currently you need to go do more. And the purpose of doing more is to get better at it so that that number becomes less and less. The second part of what you're talking about is absolutely true. Where elite people and uncommon people, I think, really create wealth or really kind of hit that kind of hockey stick of a bell curve and that growth curve is when they find ROI positive activities, income producing activities that are also ROE positive, return on energy. When you think about stuff that we like to do as people in hobbies or just things that we like, we typically feel good. We feel better after doing them, right? I always feel more energized after something like this. I love having conversations with smart people. I love talking about these topics. So whether someone's on my podcast or I'm on another podcast, I always feel really good at the end of that. Whether, if it's speaking in front of people or having conversations, making a new friend, whatever it is. If you can make those ROE positive activities also ROI positive, that's where you create efficiency. Because now everything you're doing is income producing, as opposed to this grind of, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours doing stuff I hate doing. I'm going to grind it out, and then I'm going to take an hour to recharge.
Well, then it's not a grind, right? Like you're just having fun. And that's an elusive thing. Like it's hard to do, especially in sales. There are some things you have to do that you just probably are not going to give you any ROE. But again, it's a matter of optimizing that, I guess.
Work is work, right? We're chasing the ever elusive, perfect mix of things. Like when someone teaches time blocking and time tracking, they'll say, okay, draw out your ideal week from Monday to Friday or Sunday to Saturday. Draw out your ideal week and time block, like the perfect week for you, where you just would love every single week. You're probably never going to achieve the quote perfect week, but it now gives you something to shoot for. And it's the same thing with this topic. In business, in work, there's always going to be things that you don't want to do. There's always going to be things you don't like doing. There's people like, well, I don't like social media. Well, I didn't like walking around handing out flyers either, right? So you gotta pick your pain, if you will. At the same time, to your point a second ago, there's some people that aren't great at making phone calls, but they're great at text messages and DMs, or someone that's not good on video, but they're very gifted in writing. They could do long form posts or blogs. So my challenge with a lot of coaching programs and all businesses is they're like, okay, here's your 7 steps to success. Here's the 5 exact things you need to do. And ironically, as people, we think that's what we want. But the challenge is if that's not organic to our business, we're either not going to get results and be like, well, that doesn't work. Or if we do get results, they're probably not going to be sustainable results. Mm-hmm. And the important thing in kind of even tying back to what we talked about a second ago is what about those things makes them work? For people that are good on the phone and have phone conversations, what about that phone conversation helps? Well, I love phone conversations with people, but I don't like making cold phone calls. Right. So the tactic that I use is I text and DM a lot of people and get those phone calls set up. So it's at a date and time when I know that they want to have the conversation, as opposed to just randomly calling someone. And I think that that's what we have to unpack. You've got to find things that you enjoy doing, so it's no longer a grind. You're in your zone of genius. You're in that flow state or on fire, like we used to talk about whenever we played sports.
Yeah, that's huge. It's funny. The other day I actually sent a quote to one of my team members that I read. I think it was on the Chris Williamson newsletter. If you're not subscribed to that, you should be. It's really good. But he said, there was a piece in here that said, to achieve freedom, you must be able to think for yourself. And that's a lot of what you're saying, which is interesting because like as a coach, people are hiring you to think for them in a sense, and social media. And we have so much access to so much really great information, so many smart, thoughtful, creative, strategic people that we tend to, I know I've been guilty of this for sure. I'm kind of on a journey to figure out how I think for myself again, because I've been so stuck in this cycle. But it's like what you're saying right now is you've got to do the thing, and then you have to use your own brain and consider what is working and how do I employ this to create a life that works, to create a return on investment, a return on energy. So thinking for yourself seems like a critical component of your whole strategy here as well.
Absolutely. The reason, so my company is M1 Academy. M1 stands for Mindset First. It's not the only thing that's going to make someone successful, but it is the most important thing. Our mindset controls our attitude and our actions. And those are the only two things that we can control, right? We can't control the market or our clients or our partners. What we can control are the things that we do and how we respond to the things that happen to us. 70-80% of what I coach on and help people with is very tactical, but only after we built the right foundation of mindset. So yes, people will hire me as a coach to help remove points of friction, bottlenecks, help speed up the growth curve, hold them accountable. But my job is to help them understand not just what's working and not working in their business, but why in their specific business that's working. And then we can duplicate that in other parts. But to your point, you have to go get some guidance and advice to figure out maybe what to do or how to do some things. But you do have to be thinking, is this relevant to my business? Is this relevant to my audience? Is this solving a problem? Is this adding value? And I think that, especially in a lot of industries that I think are going to be, listening to this potential episode, the reason there's such a huge income potential here is because there are hard aspects to it. A lot of different types of people can do it, and there's not this huge barrier to entry in a lot of cases. But the reason you have such huge income potential and opportunity is there's some hard aspects to it. Not only do you have to do work, but you've also have to do the smart work, and you've got to make some decisions, like you said, for yourself, that you give me 5 people and I'll give them a principle, even if they have the same exact type of business in the same exact market, because each of those people are different. The way that we execute and implement that in their business may be a little bit different, is likely a lot different.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so, and you may have more of a direction you want to go, but I did want to ask a question.
Sure.
You just alluded to the fact that we're in industries, whether it's mortgage, real estate, insurance, any sort of type of sales industry that's somehow related to real estate. It's a low barrier to entry. And for that reason, there's a lot of people that get into the business. And unfortunately, there's a lot of attrition because, to the other point you made, there's such an economic opportunity if you can find success in this industry. It's unlike any other that exists. And so, but I guess, what is it in your mind that the ones that find success and they get the traction and they get into the flow, that's like what, maybe 10% of them, and 90% of them fail, but they all have access to the same resources, the same information, they're selling the same product, they can all do the same thing. So like, I see a lot of people get confused of just keep gathering information. So I'm hearing you say they're not taking enough action, but there's got to be something more subtle than that, because there's a lot of them that, frankly, I've seen new people in the industry take way more action than I feel like I ever have. That's probably not true. I've probably taken equivalent action, but I look at them, I'm like, wow, like, you are impressive at how much you're doing. But for some reason, they don't catch stride and they don't find success, and they end up dropping out of the business. What is that issue? What have you found?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll answer it in a couple of different ways. The first one is, one of my mentors, who's also a great friend of mine, asked me, this is on a phone call 6 months ago, a year ago, it's been a little while, but he said, can greatness be taught, or are you born with greatness? And it was a super profound question. I kind of went round and round. I think that greatness comes from understanding some things, and understanding and learning comes from experience, and experience comes from doing. So it's a cycle. You've got to go do to learn some things and then fine tune it and go do more and learn some things. And I think that's where greatness comes from. There may be something biological. There's probably things in how we were raised, the world that, the environment that we came up in that makes some people more predisposed to being very laser focused, going and taking action and all those types of things that they become great. But I also think the other part of this, the second way I'll answer it, is you've got to have a massive level of self-awareness. I think that too often we look at someone that we think is like us and try to do what they did. And then when we don't get results from it, we're like, well, we suck or we're not as good. And we have this value of one person over another whenever the principle of what they were doing is probably exactly right, but you may need to execute it a little bit differently. So we need to be self-aware at what we're good at and what we're not good at. I am not a great writer. I'm not. I'm in the process of finishing a book. It's been a much longer process than I anticipated because I tend to write the way that I speak or create content. And it's a different style. When you're speaking, it's a captive audience. They're there to listen. When you're creating content, it's a passive audience. You've got to hook them in. A book is a mixture of the two, and it's very different. And I write the way that I speak. Well, I tend to speak fast and often, and a lot of times I speak and run on sentences. We can't write that way. I'm very self-aware of that fact. Yeah. I'm very self-aware of the types of content that work for me and don't, the types of people that react to me and don't. And in any type of a sales business, find that thing that's unique to you. One of the things I do in coaching is help people find their unique value offer. It's not what can you do that no one else can do. It's how do you do what you do in a unique way. The uniqueness is the individual. That's what attracts people to doing business with someone, is them. They don't care the name of the company on the business card. They don't care about a lot of things. That person, that individual is probably the most important factor, is the most important factor in that sales process. So we need to be self-aware about who we are, what we like, what our strengths and weaknesses are. And instead of trying to improve on things that we're not good at, we need to go all in and double down on things that we are good at. If you have a natural talent and ability, you can become great by continuing to add skills around it. But if there's something just isn't for you, all the skill and practice in the world probably is not going to get you to an elite level like you may want it to. So that's a big challenge that a lot of people have when you ask someone what their focus is. 80% of the time, they tell you something that they aren't doing very well that they're trying to get better at.
Right.
And I think
they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole all the time.
Yes. And what they need to be focusing on is, I realize this is working in my business and we're going to go all in and go deep on that. Now, there may be a law of diminishing return at that point in time where you're kind of capped at your potential in that. Then you could start going wide and seeing what works, right? It's the 3 E's: effort, effectiveness, and efficiency. Effort's the things that we do. We need to track those so that we can see what's working. Then when we stack those effective things, those things that are getting results, that's how we create efficiency. And I don't think people have enough self-awareness. We get in that tunnel vision of, here's what someone told me to do. It's worked for these people. It should work for me. And they just go and do and don't ever ask the question, does this work for my style? Does this work for my audience? Is this organic, number one? And two, is this sustainable long-term? You could go work 80, 100-hour weeks and make a ton of money, but can you build that business and have a sustaining business where you're not losing quality of life?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're speaking my language right there. It's funny. My favorite thing in getting older in life, and you've probably seen this too, is the cliches of life tend to make sense. They're not just cliches that you roll your eyes at anymore. And you just essentially, like, defined in a pretty significant way, enjoy the journey. And the journey really, I mean, like all these things you said, that's what people need to do. And it seems like a lot of these people probably are trying to do uncomfortable things too much as opposed to doing things that come natural, the ones that fail I'm talking about. So they're not focusing on what comes natural. But to your point, you said there may be a law of diminishing returns at some point, but what's happened. It's your earlier point of, well, if you do the thing and you have the experience, you can critique the thing, and then you can, and chances are you're just going to evolve. And
Yes.
like you just had a light bulb on my head go off. Like that is the whole cliche of enjoy the journey. You just described it. Like make it work for you, get a return on energy and maximize return on investment along the way. I mean, all these things make so much sense. That's huge.
I appreciate that. And this is something that may help people. And this is one of the main points in the book. And one of my favorite things to talk about is elite people, uncommon people embrace failure, right? My mom was a teacher growing up, so I was exposed to academia. And I like teachers. I even have a couple former teachers that are on my team. Teachers are great. The institution of academia, I'm not a fan of, because they've taught us that success is on one side, failures on the other, and you have to decide which way you want to go. I couldn't fail every test, fail every quiz. Even if I learned everything I got wrong, in academia, I'm a quote unquote failure. But in the real world, failure and success are stacked. You go through failure to get to success. We've heard it on all the podcasts. We've read it in the memoirs. We've seen people up on stage. They failed over and over and over and over, but they learned something, and that's how they were able to succeed. And so we've got to change our frame around what failure is. The opposite of success isn't failure. The opposite of success is excuses. And we have a ton of excuses for why we're either not doing the work or why the work's not, and it doesn't matter. So we have to remember there's never a situation where doing nothing is better than doing something, even if you fail. Because if you do nothing, you get nothing. If you do something, you either get a result and get a win, or you take a loss, but that L in loss is an opportunity for the L in learn. So it's technically still a win. And if you think about, there's so many people that if I don't know for sure this is going to work, if I don't know if I'm going to get a result, if it's not perfect, they don't do it. And I use the perfect metaphor is baseball. If you play professional baseball and have a 300 batting average, for those that don't speak baseball, 3 out of 10 times you get a hit, you get on base, or you hit a home run. The other 7 out of 10 times you strike out, you fly out, you ground out, you go back to the dugout having failed in front of 50,000 people that are calling you every name other than the one your mom gave you. And you've got to go back out in 15 or 20 minutes and do it again. Now, I'm sure our audience is good at math. A Major League Baseball player that has a 300 batting average, first of all, they're major leagues, probably an all-star, making millions of dollars. And if they do the math, that's what? They're failing 70% of the time. Wait, Phil, you mean you can be elite, you can be massively professional and fail 70% of the time? Yes, that's what I'm saying. See, elite people, uncommon people understand that failure is going to be part of the journey. So I'm going to take action with the assumption I'm going to get a result. I'm not trying to fail. I'm trying to get a result. But if I don't, it's not a loss because I have a chance to learn something now. And so people are like, well, I'm not afraid of failure. Okay, well, are you okay with people seeing you fail? Which is really where this dynamic is. We're okay with our failures if no one knows about them, but we don't want people knowing what our pipeline looks like or what made not in our bank account or the conversations we have with our spouse on Sunday afternoon. You know, who knows?
Or hear you suck on a sales call or fail when you're speaking in front of a crowd or whatever.
Exactly. But what happens is if we'll reframe our mind that elite people have done this too, the people that I emulate, the type of lifestyle I want, whatever your big goal is, the thing that you want badly, if you understand that the people that have achieved that goal went through the same things and changed the mindset of, I'm not scared of it. It's not going to keep me from taking action. I'm going to take action with the assumption that I'm going to get a result. I'm going to move my business forward. Even if I don't and it's a failure, my business is still moving incrementally forward because I learned something. Now, the funny thing about this for me is what you talked about earlier, people just need to take action. Yes, they do, but this branding and awareness thing is also massively important because if you think about the highest batting average, to continue the baseball metaphor, the highest batting average of all time is 400, Ted Williams. Ted Williams didn't even win the MVP that year. Joe DiMaggio won the MVP that year because the media liked him better.
Mm-hmm.
So even people that are like, I'm taking action and I'm all of these things are working. I don't need to embrace failure because everything's, that I'm doing tactically is working. Yes, but you still may not become the best if the world doesn't think that what you do is the best, which goes back into marketing and branding and adding value. So I think the thing I want people to understand about all of this stuff is that there is a set of success principles. There is a set of laws and rules that you can follow that are going to help you. But what you have to decide for yourself, or instill the help of a coach or a mentor or a manager that's going to help you, you've got to figure out, how do I apply these things to me so that I can go help people solve problems and add value? It's Zig Ziglar. You help enough people get what they want, you'll have what you want.
Yeah. That's huge.
It's all about understanding that business isn't about the metrics of closed loans or sales or revenue. That's a byproduct of how much value did you add? How many problems did you solve? How many people did you help? And if you're focusing on getting better, the process of the tactical things, if you focus on getting better at those things and massively help people, you'll never have to worry about income. And I see it all the time, these really high level producers or high performing salespeople that just focus on the tactics and the metrics and have maybe had some good years, maybe a lot of good years. It immediately falls off and isn't sustainable because it was just about that. It wasn't about this other thing. You can create an entire asset that will follow you everywhere if you just understand how to put that together for yourself.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, I want to honor your time. This has been amazing. Mic drop good throughout the whole thing. So thank you for investing the time. You're a stud. I want to make sure that people have a way to follow you. We already told them how to get to the podcast, but let's figure out how they get to you, how they get to M1 Academy, and how they get your book when that thing is out, because I'm sure it's going to be off the charts good. Where can they go? Where are the resources?
Yeah, on all social media platforms, I'm just at Phil Treadwell. Typically on Instagram and LinkedIn most, but all the other platforms, I answer my own DMs. My assistants don't do that. So I answer my own DMs. If you shoot me a DM or a message, I'll get it. My website, same thing as philtreadwell.com. There's a tab in there for some details about M1 Academy. If you're interested in the book, we are selling it for a little bit less on a pre-sale. It's philtreadwell.com/book. You can get a pre-order a copy of that as well. We're going to have that out here in just a couple of months. But again, I would love anybody to reach out if you've got a question, if there's something of value, if there was something in here that you're like, hey, that really made a mental click, please reach out. We're always trying to make sure that we're adding value to the audience when we talk about stuff, because there's things that I might love to talk about, but if that's not helping people, then there's no reason for it to get put out there. So anytime anyone reaches out and say, hey, that thing you said really clicked because of this, those are things that we want to make sure and give to as many people as possible. That's huge. Well, again, thank you. Are there any final comments you have? Anything else you've got that you feel like we want to leave it all on the mat, I guess? Is there anything else? Yeah. The last thing I'll say in closing is the way to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Or if you're an average professional, performing professional, and you want to become elite, the gap, the way you bridge that is simply a decision that you're going to do what it takes to get there. Tony Robbins says you've not truly made a decision unless it creates new action. So you may have decided, but if you're not doing something, then you didn't really make the decision. And we all know Uncle Bob or Aunt Sue that are like, well, when they've made their mind up, there's no change in their mind. We can do that too. You can make a decision. That's who I'm going to be. That's where I'm going to go. Make that decision and start taking action. And regardless of what happens, you can be stubborn and hold on to that. But it all starts with making the decision that you're going to do what it takes to get there. I love it. Well, I wish we were in person because I would love to give you a high five or something because I'm hyped and this has been really good. So thank you again for taking the time, and let's be sure you and I connect offline. And everybody, please ensure that you follow Phil. Get in touch with him. If you need some coaching, M1 Academy would be a great resource. But Phil, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you having me. Hey, man. See ya. Thank you for tuning in. For more industry insights, follow us on all platforms at Loans Elevated.
And to get in touch with our team, call or text 801-713-4000 or visit loanselevated.com.